Hello, everyone. I'll wait a moment more because I expect Michael Richardson to show up, and this will be about having an agenda, making sure that we have time for an agenda item. So I won't start agenda bashing as long as he's not showing up, unless of course that takes more than 2 more minutes. But then not everyone being here won't shouldn't stop us from doing the simple things. So hello everyone. This is the first interim of the CBOR working group in this period of interims. Um, this is an interim meeting, so the note well applies, as you are all aware of. Please keep it in mind. And as we always do, let's switch over to the minutes and to the pad, because that is where everyone can edit and where we also have the agenda for today. On our agenda, there are a few points on document status. So more control is something that I expect to just have a few words about because seems to be progressing well. EDN literals is something where I'm very curious about what the outcome of the ongoing discussions is, because that is something that we eventually should evaluate when coming back from the design team. Then we had a thread that was started, I think, yesterday on the topic of the number of allocations that we have around CBOR Pact, which was proposed for early allocation. But given that there's a discussion, let's have the discussion, and I'm glad that Joe is also here who initiated this. And then Michael put in an item about agenda going forward. I'd say let's see whether he joins us, and if so, let's talk about that too. And if we finish before the hour is on top, we can also briefly talk about CDE. Is there something anyone would like to have rearranged or added to that agenda? Hearing none, status on more control. I think, Carsten, when I looked at your slides, I saw that you had a line in there. So do you want to take that item right away? Is Carsten just still fetching coffee, or does nobody hear me?
I hear you.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the unmute button. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I have anything on the slides actually?
I think I remember some from when I just before looked at it, but I might.
So
if not, that's just a. So if you don't have anything, do you want to say something, or do I just do that here?
Yeah, I wrote something into the notes about more control, which is that it's an ISG evaluation. And the ISG telechat date is January 9th. And we have 2 direct reviews, Genart and Sektir, that look good. And we are waiting for the art review. And if Barry was here, I would remind him that this is still outstanding.
I think that's all that there is to say on that. So I think we can just swiftly move on from this. Any comments from the group? Yeah. Okay, so EDN literals is something you definitely have on your slides, and I'm curious what came out there.
Yeah. So just to remind people, we have three different things we are juggling here. We just did the CDDA thing, which is more control, and we have on the agenda things about CBOR itself, applications for CBOR, and EDN, the diagnostic notation. So this is our agenda in short. So the diagnostic notation probably is known to everyone in this meeting. I don't need to talk about that. And we are talking about literals here for potential application-specific usages. So we have had literals from the start, of course, in diagnostic notation, for instance, for text strings and byte strings. And for byte strings, we had three different ways of writing them down, just as UTF-8 text in hex and in base 64. And maybe the unusual thing for people who are new to diagnostic notation is that in those literals, you actually can have comments. So we are fans of having a little bit more elaborate syntax than other people may be having in the hex strings or base 64 strings, because this turns out to be really useful when you try to explain something with a piece of diagnostic notation. So that's the background. The common syntax was published in 2019 in RFC 8610. And the syntax, the H and the B64 syntax, are really examples for something that we are generalizing in EDN literals. So we have something like DT for a date time and IP for an IP address, and outside in a different document, we have CRI for writing IRI, an internationalized resource identifier, and then.
Oh, jeez.
Hello, Joe.
Oh, sorry. I thought that I wasn't hearing anything, and then I unmuted, and I started hearing you. So I wonder if you had said a whole bunch without me hearing it.
That's new. I haven't heard that strategy yet. But you can hear me now.
Yes.
Good. So it seems to have fixed it.
But I can only hear you if my audio is unmuted, which is odd. Maybe there's a separate button.
This is indeed odd. So,
well, keep going and I'll just be quiet.
Thank you. Okay, so if you want to write a CRI, you might have the CRI syntax in mind, but it's easier for many people to just write the IRI and have the CRI processing generate that structure. So this is what EDN literals introduced as new syntax, and yeah, we are using this the same syntax for application-oriented literals we are using for the existing hex and base 64 literals. So the idea was to do all these things in the same way, because that usually makes things the easiest for implementers. So when we started introducing an ABNF into this document, we essentially handled all these cases using one piece of ABNF, which says that an app string is an app prefix followed by a single quoted string, and then the details for app prefixes and single quoted strings follow in the grammar. And of course, the grammar goes on to define unescaped and escapable and dequote and and so on. So that is the idea. Of course, that means that this ABNF doesn't have the details on what the internal syntax of an H or a B64 or any other application-oriented literal is. And we are essentially using additional pieces of ABNF to make this additional syntax pluggable. So, for instance, somewhere in the CRI definition, it would say that the string you expect within the single quotes for a CRI actually is an IRI reference according to RFC 3987. And again, as I said, we want to do this consistently for H and base64 as well. So that's where we were. And the question really is, how do we do this? There are some implementers who really like to have a single level ABNF. And the question was, do we include the single level ABNF in the document, which would create some risk for having inconsistencies? Essentially, it seemed best to me to just have one form in there, a future-proof form, so people who want to add syntaxes here, add application-oriented prefixes here, can focus on their ABNF snippet and not on actually how to integrate it into the overall ABNF. So the proposal in the -14 that I just submitted is to continue to use the ABNF snippets as we have done in the version of the document that got working group last called. We are not making any risky grammar changes, but we provide a path for implementers that want to use an integrated grammar by showing by pointing to a tool. ABN Frob is a tool that I wrote to do this. This takes a separate ABNF snippet and translates it into ABNF that can be added to the overall grammar to create a single level implementation. So from my point of view, we have the best of both worlds. We have a stable way of providing these ABNF snippets that actually has some isolation. So you cannot break the overall ABNF syntax in one of these ABNF snippets. And we also have a way for implementers that do not want to implement things in this dual path approach. For those, we have a tool that can generate the integrated grammar. And since we are not including the tool in the RFC, which would be unusual, we can also do fixes to this tool if we find a problem with that in parallel with completing the work here. So that's the way forward that I'm proposing.
Ori?
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for doing all of this work. And I did see the tool, and I just wanted to ask, has anyone in the group consumed the ABNF that's been output from this tool yet? Have we, like you just mentioned, you know, it's possible there could be bugs in the tool and we would want to make changes in the future, but for the current outputted version that the tool generates, has it been, you know, cross-checked by at least one other implementation would be my question. And the other question for the group is, you know, are there objections to proceeding with this approach? Because this, as you all know, this EDN literals draft has been in my hands for some time. I'd like to have a sort of clear path forward from the working group on how to handle this particular issue. Thanks.
So I haven't had a chance to look at the output yet. I mean, I looked at it, but I didn't implement it. It seems more or less reasonable as a compromise, the approach. I understood the direction that was headed. I'd like to look at the output of the tool, which was more verbose than I expected, to see if there are tricks that I can use in my grammar language to compress that and make it more, easier to understand, etc. I've got extra things that are not in ABNF. And so I'm hoping that when I look at it, there'll be some things that I can compress into my implementation. That said, I think we're more or less on the right track, but I haven't gotten around to implementing it. That's on my list for this week. So this is not like maybe one day, perhaps. This is close to the top of my list.
Getting feedback there would be a great Christmas present at latest.
Heard.
Rohan?
Yeah, I likewise, I had a sort of a chunk of time where I was prepared to get, to focus on this right around the Dublin meeting, and the document wasn't ready in time, and I have another window next week that I can look at this, but I haven't had time to look at it myself. But I commit to looking at it by, say, Thursday of next week.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and I can promise that I will put in anything that Joe or you find that could make the output a little bit more concise than it is at the moment.
Great. That's basically that. To me, that's pretty much what I hope to hear. I'd say let's hear basically let's hear before Christmas what people whether that works for people, and then go ahead. Procedurally, I think this warrants a second round of working group last call. I think the document is already in the status where we can do that again.
I'd like to wait until after this round of the next couple of weeks before we do the last call, if you wouldn't mind.
So wait until after, so basically you have had your look at it, and then another interim, and then.
Well, I mean, just till the first of the year. I'm just saying, just don't do it today.
No. That's what I was saying was wait for your input, which is basically around the holidays, and if that is as positive as I hope that it will be, then we can kick off a working group last call. Based on that, basically around the change of year.
Yeah, that makes good sense to me.
And I'm in the queue basically to say, chairs, when you feel confident in the published draft version having been validated and tested sufficient that you think it's ready for a second working group last call, you can just run that on the list like you normally would, and I'll monitor the list. We'll see if there's any challenges associated to it. So procedurally, the fact that the document is in this state in the data tracker doesn't prevent you from running a second working group last call, and just noting, the reason for the second working group last call in your note to the list. And I can help with that if there's any other questions.
So just to make sure I understood you correctly, that means that data tracker wise, the document will stay where it is, but on the mailing list, more informally, I'll send out the call. Yep. Will do. Thank you.
Okay, so when we're done with this agenda item, the next one is CBOR Pact.
Yes.
I think.
Yes. Please continue there.
I do have slides there. So just as a reminder, CBOR Pact has been around for a while. I could say it has been around since 2013, but we didn't put it into the original CBOR specification because we didn't want to make too many innovations in one step. The idea is to do data compression not by using a traditional byte-wise data compression tool like Deflate, Broadly, or Z-Standard, but by actually employing the data model redundancy that we find and packing information by sharing it between different subtrees, and possibly by doing additional functions for generating places that essentially make use of redundant information. So this is different from your garden variety data compression in that you don't need to make a copy to actually work with the data. You can use, you can run your program off the pack data if you have the right programming interfaces available to work with the references that are in that packed data item. So that's the basic idea. This has been developed for a while, and Dash 13 is pretty much stable. So it has actually two parts, the reference set and the table building set. The reference set is a number of tags and symbol values that are used to stand in place for data that is referenced from the tables. And yeah, we have two reference semantics. One is a simple data item sharing mechanism. So if your tree has some subtrees that look the same, you can collapse them onto each other. You no longer really have a tree from the representation point of view, but from a semantic point of view, you still do. And the other one is where we actually consider the information in the table and the information in the rump of the packed document to be two different arguments to a function, which may be concatenation or maybe other things. And we have included some three things in this document. It might be an extension point that can be used. So this is the reference set. And it's really important to get this done in a way that it is stable, because this is not the place where we expect to have lots of extensions. I said we might have additional function tags, but the basic idea is this reference set is stable, and people who want to do special forms of packing are doing this by defining new table building tags. There are two table building tags in the batteries that are included in this draft. And well, you could define application-specific table building tags, and the CBOR representation of DNS may be one of the places where we do this for the first time. Okay, so this is the background. Again, this document has been stable. It has passed working last call and all that, and we were just doing finishing touches. And one of the finishing touches that I thought would be time to do now is the early allocation of the simple values and tags. RFC 7120 defines a procedure to do this. And I was trying to kickstart this procedure, and you can see the details on the mailing list. And it looks like some people looked at the details of that for the first time and noticed, oh, we are allocating 353 million tags. And that might at first be a little bit yeah, surprising, maybe. Yes, this is intentional. That's the point of the reference set that is defined. Yeah, okay. Christian notes in the chat that it passed working group call in the sense of the working group last call ended, but we had work to do, and we have done this work. Yeah, the way this has been done consumes a large number of tags, most of them in the inexpensive space, and about 41 in the more precious spaces. And yeah, I sent an email this today at lunchtime saying that a quick check says we are saving about 1.2 bytes per average reference under some assumptions that are maybe not perfect, but the order of magnitude is right. Yeah, there is one technical issue here, which is we can modulate the number of registrations we do in the 1+1 tag space. So 1+0 needs exactly one tag, which is very expensive, but we need to spend one here. And 1+1 in the current version of the draft, in the stable version of the draft, has 40 registrations. Joe, do you want to come in now, or let me some more?
You can keep going if you want, but Rowan's running out of time.
Yeah, I just want to quickly make a point why this is the case. So when we defined CBOR tags were a completely new concept. People were really stunned by being able to do something like that. And therefore, tags in CBOR are simple. They only have a number and one content data item. It's, however, quite frequent that you actually need two items. And I still kick myself for not insisting that we solve this problem in the original specification. This can now no longer be fixed. And the effect is that you see this byte with hexadecimal value 82 there, which is needed to put two data items under one tag. So this is a temperature in some centi-kelvins. So it has an exponent of -2 and a value of 27,000. So this is what we originally have been doing. Now, since we did this in 2013, an idiom has come up where we put one of the data items or the information for one of the data items into the tag number. So we actually allocate a tag range. And this allows us to be much more efficient. Again, these 1.2 bytes that you may not care about, but I do, yeah, it just fits better into the CBOR syntax. And CBOR Pact uses this extensively. So what you see on this slide is actually a tag with a content of a two-item array. So 82 is an array header saying this is an array with two elements, and then 21 and 196 AB3 are the two items, which you can see in the diagnostic notation on the same line. So CBOR Pact is not inventing this. So we are using tag ranges a lot in the CBOR ecosystem. And so I just looked at the registry. We currently have 6 tag ranges or areas, applications of tag ranges registered. Sometimes they have more than one range. And CBOR Pact would actually have 6 ranges. So we have the alternatives mechanism that is used by Haskell. We have bare hash values, which need some indication of what hash function is being used here. We have something that I have no idea what it is. It's an FCFS registration, pointers in PSA crypto API IPC implementation. I'm not seeing Thomas on the attendee list, so probably nobody can explain that. We have some private tag ranges, actually, which FCFS allows you to do. It's a little bit against the principles, but yeah, IANA just did this. And we have a W3C verifiable credential data integrity proof thing, which again, I have no idea what that is. Another FCFS registration. And finally, we have a content format representation that's defined in RFC 9277.
Just cutting.
That's where we are.
Yeah, I think Rohan has comments on the chat. Maybe you can come back to that very quickly because he just has about to leave. So, could you Could you read up on that?
Yeah, so Ryan is right. CBOR was never supposed to be at absolute minimum size, but we have developed an idiom that allows us to be very concise. And the proposal is to use, or the approach for a couple of years now has been to use this existing idiom in this place as well. And again, it saves slightly more than a byte per reference.
Joe?
All right. So number one, I think this is a bad idiom. The fact that we've done it 7 times, 6 times, whatever, doesn't make it right. I think it's wrong. I think it sets bad precedent, and it's just not a valid approach. It's a valid approach, but it's profligate in its use of limited resources. Number two, I don't care how many tags you allocate in 1+4 or 1+8. Use as many as you like. They're effectively infinite. If you wanted to use 30,000 1+2 tags, I'd have an issue with it. If you want to use 30 1+1 tags, I've got an issue with it. If you want to use more than 1+0 tags, I've got an issue with it. I don't think there's any use case that warrants that kind of use of a limited resource. And finally, I'm not convinced that this approach is the only possible packing approach. I think that there may be others. And if this is the only way to go about it, then when we want to do it the next way, we'll be out of tags. So those are my arguments.
Carsten?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I know why this is a bad approach. Sometimes idioms take a while to really get ingrained, and I still remember that when I learned C, I was told that the for loop of C was a really bad idiom, and people seem to have got used to that. So the one thing about tag ranges that I actually find interesting is it actually requires additional effort from the implementer. Because if you are implementing tags by running a dictionary of tag numbers, you cannot integrate a tag range into the dictionary. I mean, if it's 10, you can. If it's 300 million, you cannot. So you actually have to write code to find these tags and funnel them to the right piece of implementation. So that is actually additional work for the implementer, and I would be happier if we weren't creating that work. On the other hand, CBOR Pact is a foundational part of CBOR. We haven't worked on it for 11 years or for I don't know how long we took to pick it up again when we did -00 of that. We haven't worked on it for a while, but I think it really needs to be part of the ecosystem in order to be able to do things like the COVID health certificate, which would have benefited from this having been available. We now are working on the patient data in Germany, which use CBOR and so on. So having something like this available is a good thing. Now, I outlined in my lunchtime message, I didn't see if you don't know if you saw that, how representation of that same information model might look like that uses fewer tags. And that's right now the best I can come up with. Maybe there are better ways of doing it, but it makes a good use of the 1+0 allocation that we are planning. So that's pretty good already. Yeah, then I ran this through a little simulation that assumes that tables are used according to Zipf's law, which may not be exactly right, but it's probably the closest we have. And I found that this a representation that avoids using tag ranges costs us 1.2 bytes per reference. And is that a problem? Well, one thinks it's not a problem. I think it's actually a significant regression against what we have in CBOR PACT today.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm just going to quick say, yeah, I believe that having a compression mechanism in the core CBOR stack is important. I'm not implementing this as it currently stands, so I can't comment on, whether this approach is the best one or whatnot, but I'm not going to implement this thing. So, that's good. Somebody else can do it.
Okay. Also, Carsten, I also see you in the queue. Do you want to respond to that right away? Otherwise, okay, thanks. So, with my chair hat off, on the topic of next time we do this, we won't have that range again. All those tags that would be allocated here are only have their meaning ingrained into the document by whatever sets up that table. If the document shifted things around a bit to say that basically the meaning of those kind of made it more explicit that the meaning of those tags depends on that there is a table setup, because otherwise kind of they have no use. And if say complete packed bis worked with something other than tables as the current one does, and set up something else for the packed space, and that could then apply completely different meaning to those tags. Would that address your concern of not being able to do this twice? Joe, you were muted. Did you hear me?
I'm sorry. Say that again. I did. I thought you were talking to Carsten, though. But just reiterate the important point for me.
If that document did not say that, for example, tags, the tags of the 1+1 range and tag 6 mean go into that table, look this up, and apply kind of draft CBOR packed to it. But if that entry said this is a tag for compression, any compression needs some context, and whoever defines that context describes what this tag means, so that when we come up with the better way in a packed bis, something different would set up a table that is not even a table, but whatever we finds better. Would that address your concern of we can only do this once if we take so many tags?
I understand what you're saying. I am hesitant to want to register to basically process one tag multiple different ways. And I think Carsten has said similar things in the past about tag use.
But that's sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
So it might work. I'd have to see a more full design before I could say yes or no, absolutely. But I'm skeptical. Let's put it that way.
The thing is, the processing of a tag to some extent is already in the packed context, depending on something that is not just the tag. So in a sense, yes, that's of course something we generally try to avoid. But then again, for compression, that is already the case. Carsten?
Yeah, I think what you are saying pretty much is what the document already is saying without spending too many words on that. So the concept of a table is rather abstract concept. So the table setup actually tells you what kind of compression you are having. And the way that the argument-based tags actually go into the table and use that together with information that is in the tag is extremely general. So a new table setup mechanism, even if it doesn't do a table but do something different on the implementation side, could still use the table information model, which is essentially it has something for each number that we are using here. So that's very general. So yeah, we could change the text a little bit into that direction, but I don't think that actually would be a material change. It would just explain things but by saying what kind of extensibility we expect this to have.
Okay, so I'll get myself out of the queue and read up. Let's have a brief look on what is in the chat, because I think that's important input. But yeah, yeah, Ori.
Hi, as an individual here, I was looking at the tag registry, and I see that there's some range allocations for private tags as suggested, and then like linked to the mailing list. And I guess what I'm trying to understand is, to what extent does this tag reservation range need to be reserved only for CBOR packed versus like maybe you have a large private reserved range that everyone could use where the semantics for that range came from some other location, sort of like a two-layer construct. And the reason I'm asking this question is that I'm sort of familiar with a alternative approach to semantic data compression from the JSON LD world, which kind of starts with here's the here's a URL that gives semantics to all of the attributes in this data model, and sort of that's a sort of a two-layer construction where there's one layer that has some global interoperability, and there's a second layer that's deterministically generated and aligned to that first layer. And so I'm wondering, like, why is there a need to reserve specific to CBOR packed this range? Why can't these tables use some shared reserve for private use range? Thanks.
So the answer to that is that in JSON LD, you know that you are processing a query depending on where you are in the structure. And in CBOR, we actually have to say that because those references actually do not have the semantic orientation that queries have in JSON LD. So the other difference, of course, is that JSON LD uses strings and we use integers for referencing as index into the table. But that's a detail. The interesting thing is that JSON LD does the reference semantics implicitly while we do them explicitly. And I agree with Joe that tags better have some specific semantics. So there are exceptions or partial exceptions like the alternatives spec, because that's just something that works with the semantics of Haskell very well. But yeah, again, these are tags that are used in the alternatives construction that Haskell tends to provide. So they are still specific for one purpose. So I'm not a big fan of saying, oh, here are tags that anyone can do with what they want, because that leads to conflicts, and suddenly CBOR is no longer composable. You cannot put a piece of CBOR into a piece of CBOR and know what that is doing, because the pieces might be interfering with each other. There are actually proposals right now for fixing the original sharing tags that have been defined for Perl to make this a little bit less vulnerable to composability problems.
But how is Pact not endangering that composability in the same way?
Because a reference is not supposed to go outside of the table setup tag that is around it. So you always know that your referencing is closed if you have been doing this properly. Of course, in a security context, you would just check that there are no references that point into thin air before you compose.
But could that mechanism could Pact be layered in such a way that this mechanism is that there is one aspect of it that is ensuring this kind of closure, and the other is kind of the default application, or the one application that we have for it now, that is Pact?
Yeah, I think the mechanism that you are trying to invent is called Pact. So we kind of have that already, because all the details of setting up those tables is in the table setup algorithm, and that is an extension point.
To get a bit more yeah. I'm frankly not quite sure how we can make good progress here. Ori, yeah.
So first, I want to say, as an individual, I think this is really fascinating work, and I'm really excited about it. It sounds to me like there's some discussion around how. So first of all, there's discussion on whether these ranges are a pattern that we want to see, repeated. So I think that's a question that would be good to hear from many people on the list with enough time, a clear sort of answer on like, hey, we're doing range allocations. Like this slide you have up right now is a perfect example. Like we've done several of these. Should we keep doing them? And if we do one and there's a large range, what's some of the criteria that we might consider for, what makes an appropriate range allocation. So I think that's one thing that it would be nice to see more folks comment on. But the other thought that I have regarding all of this is this approach and the size of the range bounds the complexity of data model instances, right? So there's some relationship here between CBOR packed and in some sense the sort of maximum depth exceeded errors you see in JSON parsers to some degree. Like this is creating a bound through the size of the allocation. And so I wonder like whether that bound is correct in the current request, or if there would be, more objections or less objections if that bound was small. Like the maximum CBOR packed data structure size is smaller, perhaps than it is today. And there's a smaller allocation. What does that change the comments from folks who've commented on the list or at the mic here? Those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Carsten? Thank you.
Yeah, one important design consideration is that we do not want to create artificial limitations. Obviously, we have artificial limitations because any range is going to be finite. But the idea was to have a couple 100 million, which is unlikely to be less than what a CBOR data item actually needs in terms of tags. So we still have an artificial limitation, but you have to climb the Mount Everest to actually reach it.
And if I understood Joe's comment earlier, that was that like you don't care so much about like how many of the 64-bit things are taken, because like unless it's a sizable portion of that space.
I think that's correct. I think if you want to use a large amount of the still available space in whatever registry in whatever section you're in, then that should be an issue. So if you wanted to register like 2 to the 126th of the 1+8 tags, then yeah, I'd have an issue with that. So I don't not care how many you register, but I hope nobody wants to register 2 to the 126 tags at once.
Well, just for context, I think the largest that we've had so far in a limited range was the tag for the content format numbers, which is about 32-bit out of the 64-bit space. 16-bit out of the 32-bit space.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
like
it's a lot.
That's like just taking one single 16-bit number. So
right, if you registered 2 to the 29th out of the 32-bit space, like sure, I'd have an issue.
Yeah, actually, I think understanding what was just discussed is a prerequisite for being a designated expert for CBOR text. We have had these discussions for a long time, and that's why there is this tool, Tag Report, that actually tells you what is the allocation status of the ranges that we have available and so on. So yeah, we can write this up, but I don't think we have to turn this into an RFC.
So on making back to the topic of like how can we get on here, Joe, and I think Rohan had to leave already. Joe, if there were an example of like what is the most like non-packed thing that can still live within the table framework, that if I understand Carsten you correctly, that you think is like already that kind of extensible to accommodate a future thing, would it help to have a like 10-line sketch of what the most exotic thing that we could still do in a packed next would be?
If that was a question to me, the answer is I don't know.
Yeah, I think
would you be willing to try to find out?
we have to be careful about proof by lack of imagination.
I'm not talking about proof by lack of imagination. I'm talking about showing that showing that it is so powerful that that it suffices to state that it's good enough to claim to be extendable.
Yeah, I'm really worried about a bright PhD candidate coming along in 10 years and saying, "Oh, you missed a thing here," and there's a completely different way of doing compression that gives us a 10x win, or even a 30% win.
Things whatever they would come up with needs to be within the area of CBOR tags in a sense. So it like there is already a bound on what that can be. My hope would be that we can show that the space between what can be done as a packed biz with the tags allocated and what can be done in CBOR packed in CBOR in general is negligibly small. But I don't know if we can show that.
Yeah, so we may not be able to prove that. We may be able to demonstrate that. I certainly can demonstrate it to my mind pretty quickly, but I'm having a hard time writing this up because whatever I write up would be so outlandish that it doesn't make sense. There is a reason why CBOR Pact does certain things right now and doesn't do other things. And now adding things that it doesn't do on purpose and say, oh, we can do that as well, is not necessarily the way my brain works.
Can we discuss the additional information 28 approach just to discard it? I mean,
I didn't manage to track that part of the chat, so.
Oh, so here's the proposal. Additional information 28 takes it's effectively always a duple, and it takes an integer after, and then anything after that. No, it's a triple. It takes an integer tag number, an integer extra information, and then anything.
Yeah, my response would be this is a CBOR 2.0, which we certainly
can
it
would break backward compatibility.
And the whole idea about things like CBOR Pact is that you can do them with a run-of-the-mill generic decoder, because that will serve you just the bits you need to then go on with your Pact business, which, by the way, is the way I've implemented it. I think that's really precious. It's too bad that we cannot use the free additional information space, and I'm open to wild ideas there, but the compatibility issue stays.
I agree with that. I wonder, but if we keep having this same problem over and over again, and this extra byte actually matters, I think in most cases it doesn't matter. I think in almost every case, for example, in the case where we had all the different types of arrays, like the arrays are going to be so large that they swamp the extra byte. Who cares? Yeah. Right? So that one didn't have to be, saving that byte didn't help anything in that particular case. I see your point about saving a byte here. Perhaps I agree with you, but like if this keeps coming up, if this pattern keeps coming up, it seems like we ought to have some kind of approach that we can reuse.
Given the time, that sounds a bit like homework for everyone to think about. Ori, Ori?
Yeah, so thanks for the time check. I think what would be helpful would be to look at some concrete data models that need this and show some sort of concrete syntax, and to clearly communicate how much of the ranges we'll need to request, and to make sure that we get review from all of the groups that depend on CBOR, like COSI and all of the other working groups, because they're all going to be impacted by consuming an allocation that's like this. So it needs wider review beyond just this group. And I think some concrete data model instances showing why this is a valuable approach, how much bytes it saves, and like showing you how to do something in DNS or something in COSI, for example, will help people understand that this is an investment that's worth making. We need to hear from more folks on the list. That's my 2 cents as the area director. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ori. Thanks, Marco, for helping with the minutes. Let's get some examples. Let's try a few weird things and see where this gets us until we meet in the next year. Read you all on the mailing list. Looking forward to seeing updates there. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.